Thank you for being here today. We're just going to wait a couple minutes so that everybody who is attending live will have a chance to show up before we launch into the presentation. So thank you everybody for being here today. Feel free to say hello in the chat. Can everybody hear me? Hello? You can hear me? Oh, that's great. Hello, everybody. If you're able to say hello in the chat, that would be great. It's wonderful to see where everyone's located around the world. I'm in Toronto. Hello in San Jose and Chicago. And hello, everybody in Amsterdam and New York City and Houston and Florida. Hello in Virginia and Phoenix. Hello, everybody. Hello in the UK and Bloomington, Indiana, Abuja. I feel like I know that city, but I don't know where it is. Hello, everybody. Good to see you today. We're just going to wait one more minute before we get started. If you're here, please say hello in the chat. I'm excited for today's talk with Erin. I think it's going to be great. So I hope you're excited too. We're just going to wait another minute and then we'll get started. Keep in mind that we will be sending you the slides after the talk when we send out the recording. So don't worry too much about taking notes. And you'll also be able to go back and review the recording if you want. So I hope you get a lot out of the talk today and really looking forward to it. And hello, everybody. Hello in Puerto Rico and Texas. Hello in Victoria, BC. Hello in Vancouver Island. Hello, Pittsburgh and New Jersey. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. All right, let me just pull up my notes and we will get started. Hello, writers. This is Jacob Jans with the Writers Workshop at Authors Publish. Today, I'm pleased to introduce Erin Swann, who will be giving a talk on creating and maintaining a connection with your readers through the use of techniques for showing and telling your story. This is part of our monthly lecture series where we host talks on the craft of writing and the business of publishing. Erin Swann is a speculative fiction author and writing instructor. She's been published in a wide variety of publications, including Flash Fiction Online, Andromeda Spaceways, Factor 4 Magazine, amongst other places. Her work has also been longlisted or a finalist for many awards, including the Parsec Short Story Award, the Page Turner Award, and the Writers of the Future Award. Thank you, Erin, for being here today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you
How
for
are
having
you?
me. Good, good, great. I'm excited for this lecture.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I suspect I'm going to learn a lot, actually.
Good. Yeah,
So,
no, it's a very hot topic, showing and telling for sure.
yeah. And I think one that's really important, everybody's heard the idea of show, don't tell, but I've always thought that wasn't quite right.
Agreed.
So it'll be good to get more into thinking about how that should work.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so while Erin's pulling up the slides, I'll just remind you that we're going to be sending out some handouts after the talk including the slideshow. So
Yes.
hopefully everybody will enjoy it. And yeah, Erin, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I do have a worksheet takeaway thing. Um for the lecture today too. So the slides may not have all the information, but the notes page has a bit more of like the strong bullet points. All right. So with the invitation, you should have received my warm-up activity to try. I love starting with warm-ups to get our minds kind of zoned in on the topic. So you were tasked to jot down at least 3 things that define your character, any character you'd like to work on. This could be their job, hobbies they engage in, and or personality traits. And then you were to write down an action they can take that demonstrates each thing without telling us what it is. If you'd like an example, one of my own characters is socially awkward. An action that demonstrates this is a god-awful laugh, forced whenever she is certain she is supposed to laugh. The laugh doesn't sound genuine. A few characters view this as being purposefully sarcastic, which makes her awkwardness even stronger when she can't figure out why she isn't fitting in. If you've completed the warm-up and you'd like to share it, you can feel free to type it in the chat during the talk. I download the chat afterwards and I always read through it just to see if there's anything that I missed. All right. So, show, don't tell. Classic advice. But classic advice doesn't always get it quite right. At least in this case, it doesn't explore important nuances. Telling is essential, but telling the wrong way is easy, and telling the wrong way can kill a book. It's not about if you tell, it's about when. Timing is key. I'm going to run through a few techniques today that go over showing and telling. How do we make readers want to be told? And what are some ways to show when we think we have to tell? At its core, I think something Noah Lukeman says best, is best encompasses this idea in his book, The First 5 Pages. A reader must enter a world. They cannot have it described to them. No one wants to be told what to do. We outwardly stomp our feet when we're young, but does that really change when we grow up? Who hasn't outwardly or inwardly stomped their foot when told to do something without purpose or a valid explanation? I can't stand it. Explain why to me first. If I know why I should care and it makes sense, then sure, I'll consider it. I might even agree with you. It's a big reason you hear so many kids say, but why? It's hardwired into us to understand the world and its motivators on an evolutionary level. Now, what's better than just explaining why I should care? Let me figure it out for myself. Let me notice the problem, see the people involved who are suffering, stressed, anxious, people I care about. I will roll up my sleeves and ask what I can do to help. Tell me what to do to help. Tell me what to do to help, please. And hopefully you noticed a shift in that from the first scenario. I think there are a few better ways to organize, show, and tell advice. I'm going to focus on a loose 3 methods today. Tell when it doesn't make sense to show. Show the reader first to form connections, make them care, and then tell them once readers are connected. And use telling as an opportunity to establish voice and point of view. When writing my first manuscript, I employed a ton of show techniques, determined that I would not fall into the show don't tell trap. I would show the entirety of my second world science fantasy through my character's eyes. I sent it off to an agent through Manuscript Academy and paid for feedback. The agent came back and said, all these showing pieces are great, but not together and not at the beginning of the story. I can't keep it all in my head while I'm trying to connect with characters and understand the outer situation. Sometimes it's okay to just tell. It's necessary. If you show everything, the reader is doing too much work to figure things out, especially at the beginning, before they care about the character and the story to put such effort in. Now, that being said, you should still do more showing than telling, especially at the beginning of the story, to spark interest, mystery, questions. I wrote a short story premise to illustrate this. There are 2 girls locked in towers on opposite sides of the world. They have never met, yet they share a face and a name. There are no doors or windows to the outside, aside from 2 slits in the stone wall. The girls know not to go near them. The slits aren't for the view, but for oxygen. Sunlight is dangerous. Each morning, they wake to food that appears, by magic, inside the empty hearth. Although they have never seen another soul, they don't feel alone. And although they have never spoken to anyone, they sing the same identical lullaby to themselves every night. One sings an octave lower than the other, and they dream of running their hands through fields of gold. Are you interested yet? Twin princesses are cursed at birth to burn alive in the sun. Hoping to break the curse, the king and queen follow directions of a fairy godmother who tells them to place their daughters on opposite sides of the world in total isolation, as this will weaken and eventually break their curse. The king and queen can't stand to abandon their children to such a fate, so they resolved to live apart, one each in each lower half of the tower, sneaking up at night to whisper a lullaby and stories to fill their dreams with happy thoughts. The king and queen don't realize their act of love is foiling the cure to the curse. If they continue when the girls are released on their 18th birthday, they will both burn alive moments after they taste freedom. Now, what if I had simply told you up front that the king and queen have cursed daughters who are locked away to break the spell? They visit them when they sleep because they love them, but they don't know that that love is going to keep the curse intact. While you may or may not find the premise interesting still, does it draw you in the same as the first version? Readers want to feel ownership in a story. We want to make it our own. And if we're told everything up front, we stay separate from it because telling creates distance. But if you allow readers to form questions, let them wonder, debate, figure things out for themselves, discover answers, they will hunger for the explanations behind them. They will want resolution because they have experienced a bit of the character's struggle and conflict themselves. We experience stories, we don't observe them. Let the reader experience being locked in that tower on some level. They will crave a justification. For a reader to truly engage, they must make the text their own. Because would you put down something you created? Back to the first 5 pages, Noah Lukeman has a great example of the impact of early showing. Explain your character is a thief, and they can be nothing but that. Show a character slipping a $20 bill out of someone's wallet, and readers will come up with different explanations. Are they taking money back that was already theirs? Is it counterfeit and the character is saving someone from getting in trouble with it? Perhaps the characters engage in an endless game of stealing from each other for sport. Readers will come up with different explanations, and more importantly, wonder at the characters' motivations. It is telling of the reader's personal life experiences. A reader's way of looking at a text can tell us more about them than the text. The text becomes like a mirror, a blank slate onto which readers project their own states of mind. Moreover, the same text can have different meanings for those same readers a year, 5, or 10 years later. And Lukeman says that's what keeps the best literature endlessly fascinating. Remember the warm-up we did? I wrote that exercise for this particular concept. If you heard my other lecture or have taken my class, you may be familiar with the fact that our brains actively participate while we read. We don't see the story from a bird's eye view or as a separate observing entity. We experience story as if it's happening to us, as if we are in the character's shoes. The best way to simulate an experience is to mirror life. When was the last time life handed you answers? And I don't mean advice someone wiser or not so wise tries to give you. Advice is also ambiguous. Someone else offering their personal outlook to counter your own doesn't necessarily equate to an actual answer. By immersing your reader, showing them a world they need to interpret on their own, they may not come up with the exact vision you have in mind, but that's a good thing. We want them to own the work themselves, and to do that, you have to let go of some control. Of all the craft advice I've read and heard, control is a big thing many new writers have trouble letting go of. We want to be in control of our own work. And it holds true for many creatives. I have been a visual artist for almost 3 decades, and I teach elementary art to students for 18 years. So I've seen it professional, in my professional viewpoint as well, right? Our creations are very deeply personal to us, and rightly so. It's our creation. But to share it with the world means letting others derive their own personal meanings from it too. And with visual art, we don't usually get any words to explain our work unless you have like an artist statement with your image. It's a bit easier to understand that people won't get exactly the same thing out of it that we do. They may get something completely different. Understand that others will interpret your work differently based on their prior knowledge and life experiences. As a writer, that means that it's less about showing the reader your world and your characters. It's more about giving them the space to make those things theirs. Now, getting back to our root topic, show and tell. It's all about timing. Tell only what's necessary in the beginning, things that won't overcomplicate the narrative. But when you tell with more than one purpose. There's plenty of different purposes, but I'm going to explore just one category today: character. More specifically, voice. Can you define your character's voice? Because if you can, you have unlocked how to show and tell at the same time, something that even movies can't match. And you want an example? I'm going to share a 3-part exercise on telling with purpose that you can try on your own after the lecture. I will run through it now using my example of this exercise, but I have a downloadable file with notes on this lecture that include this exercise as well, so don't worry about taking notes. Think of a place of significance to your main character. Describe it. Use sensory details. Write down whatever comes to mind. I'm going to give you an example from my current work in progress. The clay flats rusted the land south of the capital, all the way to where the red forests bled amber sap, bordered by 2 bodies of jeweled saltwater filled with green weedy tresses. There wasn't much beyond a graveyard of corroded metal vehicles, bone dry of fuel and picked clean by scavengers. Plagued with dust blizzards and worse, electrical storms, it was best for people to stay close to home during flash season. If they had to travel, it was safest to use the main trade routes, which boasted emergency shelters for the unsuspecting traveler. Now, this is an example from when I did this exercise with my group. So for this first one, you need to write down the first description that comes to mind. Don't think about it, don't analyze it, just write it. Then you need to be honest. Was that in your character's voice or your own? Really think how your character would think. Would they care about the same things you do? Or what you think the readers will care about? Does your character have the same opinions and perceptions? Are their life experiences different from your own? How would they describe this environment differently? They have opinions, likes, dislikes that should vary from your own and others. If it's a significant place, those feelings are probably strong and also oddly specific. And for those of you writing memoirs involving yourself as a character, you're not off the hook. How much of the authentic you did you put in your first description? Did you describe things from a zoomed out perspective? Were you trying to give readers an overview or a personal tale? Apply these questions to your character, or if you're the character, apply them to yourself. What do you view in ways others may not? What would you notice that others wouldn't? Don't take yourself for granted just because you're the main character. People spend their whole lives trying to figure out what they want. You aren't all figured out either. So here's an example from that same passage I just read through a stronger filter of my main character. The clay flats, arid, unforgiving, unapologetic. A man could lose himself real quick out here, find blissful oblivion in the anonymity of nature. It didn't give a shit what someone did or didn't do. Tomas breathed in the crackling spice of an approaching storm, one that would hit fast and pass quickly. It was close, though the gray sky above was still a shade lighter than pewter. Flash season was frightfully unpredictable to the sensible folk of Imperia. The corners of Tomas's lips curled upwards. Now, on to part 3. If you thought we were done, you're wrong. You may only have one point of view in your current novel, but as someone who enjoys distinguishing voices, indulge me. Push yourself for a moment, even if you don't have multiple perspectives. Describe this place from the perspective of someone else in your story, someone who has a different opinion of this same place. Can you describe it without saying what they feel about it? Would they notice different things, use different types of metaphors and analogies? Here's my example. Same place, different perspective. Trina inhaled, immediately regretting it. The clay flats, barren, acrid, the kind of place that caked a tongue with dust before a traveler had time to dehydrate. The only signs of life that didn't consider a person food were dry scrubs that looked deader than her peach blossoms. With just enough moisture in the air to be annoying, silt glazed Trina's outer duster in layers, attempting to transform her into a living clay statue. It was one of the worst things about the flats. If it wasn't trying to bake her into a brick, it attempted to mold her into the dismal ochre landscape. Why does this exercise work? I'm sure most of you have heard of unreliable narrators, but let's be real honest with ourselves. Everyone is unreliable. We all have preferences and opinions. We pass judgments, see things a certain way based on our past experiences. We can't be objective if we're honest. Telling this way forms a distinctive voice. It shows the reader who this character is while telling us about something at the same time. This telling isn't really telling, it's showing the character's perspective. This works not just for environments, but for anything in a story. Other characters, objects, events, you name it, your character should have opinion about it. Do they feel differently about it than others do? Perfect. We are hardwired to be drawn in by contrasts. Story is as much, if not more, about characters as about plot. They are your plot, their needs, wishes, and developments. Now, this is from Lukeman's book, but I have seen this same statement over and over again in many craft books. If you have a strong character, a character readers connect to, telling becomes a breeze. Show your character, and they can tell pretty much anything, and your readers will gobble it up. You can also show by not telling, too. Eileen Cook is a rehabilitation counselor, and she gives great examples in her book, Build Better Characters. She says, if I ask my client about their relationship with their mother, and they respond with, my mom is such a strong woman, she's a pillar in our community, they haven't answered the question. Right away, that tells us there's more to that relationship. Maybe it's something the client isn't aware of yet, or maybe it's something they're avoiding. Either way, by not stating something, you told the reader there is something more. You posed a question, and questions keep readers reading. Drop breadcrumbs instead of telling straight up. Show clues and let the reader unravel complexities as the story goes on. Here's another example. Why, John, I would love nothing more than to go out with you tonight, Kelly said, twisting the rings on her fingers. We see that twisting and it makes us wonder, is that sarcasm? Is she hiding something? Is she serious but nervous? Something isn't being told to me, and I need to find out what it is. And guess what? Make that question burn long and hard enough that when you tell your readers later what it is, they will rejoice. I'm going to give you one last exercise that you can try on your own. Think of something another character doesn't accept, wants to hide, or in some other way is unwilling to share with your point of view character. Put them in a scenario where they have to make the choice not to tell your point of view character, and thereby the reader, what that thing is. Use body language, metaphors, analogies, as well as the words they choose to say out loud. How does your character react? Do they pick up on it? Are they oblivious, distracted, suspicious? This interaction plants a question in the reader's mind. They want to know what's being kept from them. Give them questions that will burn holes in their minds. I'll leave you with this thought from Lisa Cron in one of my favorite craft books, Story Genius. She says that it isn't voice, plot, or talent that gives story meaning and brings it to life. No matter how well we balance show and tell, what you are searching for is electric, something that illuminates the plot, the voice, showing, and telling. It flows directly from how the protagonist makes sense of what's happening, how they struggle with, evaluate, and weigh what matters most to them, and then how to make hard decisions to move the action forward. And this struggle is in general. It's specific, born out of an impossible goal to achieve their desire while remaining true to the fear that is keeping them from it. If you get that figured out, show and tell are a piece of cake. And if you're interested in learning more about this electricity of character, I am running a class very soon on this topic, bringing your characters to life. We're going to go over 3 principal elements that readers, as well as agents and publishers, must connect with in the first part of your story, as well as creating authentic characters that feel truly real. And we will also be looking back at what you must know about your character before the first page even starts to make their story captivating. And here are my references for the lecture today. The first 5 pages by Noah Lukeman, Build Better Characters by Eileen Cook, and Story Genius by Lisa Cron. And that's it.
Thank you, Erin.
You're welcome.
That was wonderful.
Should I leave this? Oh, okay. I was going to
Oh
say, I
yeah,
didn't know if I
I
should leave.
closed it up so that people can see our faces.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, I really I like that idea that you can do character development through your scene descriptions. I thought that was pretty cool, and like reflecting on things I've read, of course
Yeah.
that's
It's very
true.
fun.
Yeah, that just makes sense, but it's not an obvious idea until you learn it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also like the idea of what you don't tell, like I've I've noticed some authors really like hit you over the head with that, but these are in
Yeah.
like published really addictive books. Like one of the big tropes that happens is the characters have this big challenge and then they talk and they come up with the plan and the narrator says they've come up with the plan to solve it and they don't tell you what the plan is
Yeah.
and then you get to watch it unfold.
Yeah. Because that
Yeah.
is, I would say, in a lot of times I've done critique swaps or beta reading, um, it can be very tempting to lay it out, like
Mhm.
everything that the plan is, but then you have completely taken away any mystery and tension, because then the reader already knows what's going to happen in the next part of the story. And you want to create questions to keep them reading. Don't give them answers.
Do you think that's something like to look at during the revision process is what
Absolutely.
information to take away?
Yes, I'm one of those that is more of a discovery writer, so I I kind of know the big things and where they're going to fall, but then I discovery write my first draft and then you go back and ask, when does this really need to happen? Like when do the readers need to know this? Because if they don't need to know this now, then I don't need to put it here. If you introduce
Mhm.
it too early, they either don't care, you lose their interest, or they don't remember later when it actually becomes relevant.
Yeah.
That's telling in a not so effective way.
Mhm. If anyone has questions, you are welcome to post your questions in the Q&A box. It should be on the bottom of your screen. We have a question from Lindy. Could you talk a bit more about the slide idea where with character achieve their desire to remain true to themselves and overcome their fears? I think that was towards the end of the
Oh,
yeah.
the third rail. I know what you're talking
Hmm.
about. Yes. So it is something, Lisa Cron in particular goes into pretty great detail about this, but essentially you have a character's like something the character wants. They want this thing. And then you need to ask what their motivation is. Why do they want this thing? Okay. So once you have that figured out, what they want and why they want it,
Hmm.
you then need to ask, well, why don't they have it, right? There's a reason, there's something that's your conflict, your inner conflict. Why can't they have it? And in this form, a lot of times it's a misbelief, or a fear. So the conflict, the inner conflict in a book is generally the struggle between the inner want and the inner fear, and the characters need to try and have their cake and eat it too, because that is, and then once they kind of overcome the fear and let that
Hmm.
fear go, right, that misbelief, that's that sense of relief that, oh my gosh, they finally got it, right? But the tension comes from them trying to hold on to two things that are just impossible to hold on to at the same time.
Yeah, and that's how you that's why you end up seeing characters make a lot of mistakes
Yes,
as the
yes,
story progresses, and you're
yes.
like, no, don't do
Yeah.
that, but they have
Yeah.
to do
I
that in
know
order
what
to.
you want, and I know this is not how you get it. Stop doing it
Mhm.
this way. You're doing it the wrong way. But they have to learn through making those mistakes that this is a misbelief and that it is not actually going to lead me in the direction I think it
Mhm.
is. That fear is usually something that we feel keeps us safe. And in fact, it's keeping us from not achieving the goal that we want or the character wants.
We have another question from Alex. Do you have advice on switching perspectives? Like for your scenery description example, if the various characters are seeing it together, which perspective would you give?
I would say whatever one is more vivid at the moment.
Hmm.
I like I I have a very hard time writing. I don't think there's one novel where I wanted to write in one perspective only. I like ensemble casts. I like distinctive voices. I think it's fun because there's a better, easier way of telling if you have people with different perspectives look viewing things. Um, so I would just say whoever is going to describe it, I would say the best first impression you want to give. So the first person that describes the one that I gave as an example, the clay flats, which is like basically their surrounding area that they spend a good deal of the book in, I have the main character describe it first because it is very important to him. And unlike most of the this world who doesn't really like this dry, basically desert, he finds a freedom out there that most people wouldn't. So it's
Hmm.
kind of a fresh perspective in that it's not what's expected, which is another good suggestion when you're writing. You don't really want to give readers exactly what they're expecting because then you're not really telling there's anything new to learn. And giving an indicator that there's something new to be learned is another way to keep readers reading.
Yeah. We have a question oh, from Susanna. Is telling the same as exposition? If not, how are they different?
Yeah, it's basically exposition.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
just a nicer way of saying
Th-
it.
There's a lot of jargon in the
Yeah.
writing world, so it's good to be clear, right?
Yes.
It's hard to keep track of it all.
Yeah.
Um, oh, um, we have a question from Major Black. Is there a rule for pacing, i.e., like every 5 minutes, do something?
In regards to showing versus telling, I don't think so. I know that I wouldn't put a whole bunch of really dense paragraphs together. I think
Hmm.
as far as descriptions go for showing or telling, you don't want to have a lot of solid blocks of text, vary it. But sometimes voice can help kind of break up descriptions. And by using your character's voice more strongly, it can help speed things up a bit and make them a little more interesting and like the reader wants to know rather than using that zoomed out like bird's eye view perspective, which can slow things down because the readers have to sit and try and imagine all of the different things going on.
Hmm. Um, Elizabeth is asking, do these ideas apply to memoir? And I know you addressed this a little bit. Do you have any
Yes.
more like insights on this?
Yeah, I think in the classes I've taught, I always have memoir students, and they say, "Well, I don't really know how the character parts apply because it's me." And it's the same thing I said in the lecture, and that's how much of your authentic voice did you put in instead of just explaining things as you think a reader would want them explained, right? Because it's very easy to just sit and explain something, but did you
Hmm.
put your opinion into it, your voice into it? So yes, it does apply to memoir, absolutely.
Yeah, I think we get this question a lot, and like memoir is so close to fiction in terms of the storytelling techniques that
Yeah.
pretty much any fiction technique seems to apply to memoir.
Hmm.
And it's yeah, and there's a lot of overlap there in general, I would say based on because I've asked this question of quite a lot of successful authors, and the
Yeah.
answer is usually you can apply these ideas.
Yes.
We have a question from Krista. Can you talk to us about telling and internalization? I've had an editor highlight an overuse of telling the character's thoughts to the point that it becomes exposition.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. I see it a lot when I'm doing um, critiques. So you having your character think everything does not feel authentic because I don't know that anybody, when you're having thoughts about a specific thing in real life, that would be just spelled out so plainly, right? We analyze information, we intake it. There's a mix of past experiences, memories, prior knowledge that kind of all mix together to create inner thought. So if you just write down, this is how I feel because of this and this and this, and I know this and I know that, trying to simulate that, it doesn't really work because that's not how we think. It's a bit more genuine to instead of telling about those experiences, maybe have them have a moment where there's a flash of their past memory, or they use an analogy based on something that's like prior knowledge to them. Oh, this is like that time that blah, 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 blah happened. Or, this is like um, something that they're aware of. They'll compare it to something that they're familiar with, if that makes sense. So, and that goes into like metaphor families, which is a really great thing for developing character voice, where if they are like Obi-Wan Kenobi was in Star Wars, he was a Jedi, but when you meet him, he's this peaceful monk character. But the way that he speaks is still very militant. And the analogies he makes is related to his past life as opposed to how a peaceful monk might describe sand people. The way that he described the sand people of their strategic ways of walking in a straight line to be less of a target and certain things like that. Um, it's it's a different way to um, show the character. I'm sorry, my mind just blanked out.
Yeah. It seems like you're talking about like the telling like the characters' thoughts can have different layers of ideas built into them. Like it's showing like
Yes.
where they came from and like how they think
Hmm.
as much as it is like the specific detail in that scene that they're
Yes.
talking about.
Yeah. Telling them what the character is thinking is taking away your reader's agency to figure it out,
Hmm.
which goes back to what the lecture was talking about. Don't tell them everything. Give them some analogies, a past memory, and then the reader can go, oh, I think I know what they're thinking. I think I know how they feel. And they have figured it out based on observing the inner memories or past experiences of the character.
Yeah. I have a lot of siblings, and this discussion has made me remember what it was like to be annoyed by a sibling when I was little. Like if they were eating cereal in the wrong way,
Yeah.
that could be so annoying. But like I wouldn't say, "Oh, I'm just really mad at you." I'd be like, "Stop eating your
Yes.
cereal,"
Exactly. Yeah.
which is a kind of a telling, right? Like
Uh-huh.
being annoyed with cereal eating versus
Yes.
like saying, "I'm just mad
Thinking
at."
I'm angry at this person. Yeah.
Um, anyways, that's a bit of a personal example from my own childhood. We have a good question from Lawrence. Do you recommend using dialogue to give information as opposed to telling in the narrative form? And when is
I,
it too much?
yeah, so dialogue's tricky because you don't want the character to say anything aloud they wouldn't actually say. It's very easy, and a lot of writers will use dialogue to kind of cram in exposition, like the you and I both know that this and this and this. That is not what you want to put in dialogue.
Hmm.
Primarily, you need to use dialogue to tell only what's necessary. Use dialogue first as a vehicle for characterization. And then through that, you can tell certain things, but it should not be your primary source of telling because a lot of times, especially if it's stuff that the reader doesn't yet know, but the characters know, it does not feel authentic to then have them say out loud what they know, right? Nobody
Hmm.
does that in real life. Your dialogue, first and foremost, should be authentic and it should not be depended on for telling. Not that you can't tell once in a while and here and there and certain things, but it shouldn't be something you go to, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So it can be used in limited doses.
Little bits and when it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a question from Karen. In trying to reveal a plot line through a variety of POVs, points of view, I try to juggle characters' voices by way of chapter titles that clue the reader in to who is talking.
Mhm.
Does this sound like a strategy honoring show don't tell,
I think
etc.?
so. Yeah,
No.
absolutely. I would also, especially if you're doing multiple POVs, the using the chapter title can be helpful, but then making sure that first paragraph, because I also switch characters, point
Hmm.
of views, make the first like paragraph or sentence or two extra like voicey in that person's perspective. The best goal is if you're able to start a chapter and someone can know what character is talking without you telling them who's talking. That's great. I would still like maybe drop their name in, but that's the ultimate goal. You don't want them to know. You
Hmm.
don't want to tell them. They should know on their own.
Yeah, I've read some books recently that had a lot of POVs, and usually I could tell on the first sentence of the new POV.
Yeah.
And like making it really voicey. I think that's what they
Hmm.
did.
Yep.
And that sounds like kind of a fun exercise. Go through all those first sentences in each section and see how much you could like exaggerate the voice.
Yeah. And I do that a lot when I'm rewriting, like on my second draft, because again, I discovery write. So a lot of times when I go back, I realize this isn't, this isn't really in the character voice yet. It's more just in my voice because I'm telling the
Hmm.
story to myself, so I know how everything's going, and where it's going to go. And a lot of times, I'm like, I don't like how this starts. I'll completely just start over and ask the character in my head, what's the first thing you would say in this scene? What's your opinion of this scene? And then I
Hmm.
will use the first sentence for the character to very plainly, strongly state what's currently going on, either internal or external. And I found that a lot of times that just single sentence can kind of help drive a more voicey narrative afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it seems like that must also really push you to really figure out your characters so you can
Yeah.
get there and make that easy to differentiate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you have any advice for how showing and telling differ between short story writing versus novel writing?
I don't think there's a difference. I
Yeah.
think you have to, if anything, be a bit stronger with voice with short story because you have less words.
Hmm.
But I think you can get really voicey with microfiction, like 100
Yeah.
words. There's ways to do it. One of my critique partners does um, like microfiction, 100 words, and they're all very distinct and voicey. So it is
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. Uh, all right. Um, we have a question from PL Jonas. What about when writing in first person? Does is it all kind of the same ideas, or
Yeah.
is there variation in how you think about it?
No, I think first person makes voice easier
Hmm.
because you can get even deeper in. It's a little more immersive for the reader because again, when we read, we're not viewing the story, we're experiencing it. And we aren't really experiencing things from a third person perspective. It's an I. So first person can help immersion even more. But same techniques, just ask again, is this how they would think about something or how they would analyze it? Think about who they are as a person when doing anything. Your character is the filter
Hmm.
of your story.
Hmm. We have a question from Diana. Sorry if I said your name wrong. Can you give an example of when telling is necessary?
So
Like,
I would say, like in the beginning of a story, right? There are certain mechanics, maybe, especially when it's second world science fantasy, I'll say, just, off the top of my head, um, that certain mechanics, like I used key for mine, which is something that some people might be familiar with, like a spiritual aura. But I was trying to show it without explaining it. But it is such a very basic concept. And I was trying to avoid by just avoid saying what I just said, that it is a spiritual aura that could be used to harness energy. And I wasn't saying it, I was like dancing around it. And the agent was like, you could just use a sentence and say it. It's okay. You show so much else, just say it. You're not telling everything. It's something small and simple. The reader will forgive you. You don't
yeah,
have to make them work so hard to figure out every single thing in the beginning of the story because they're getting to know the characters, they're getting to know the world. There's already a whole bunch of unfamiliar things that they're kind of letting settle. Relieve some of the burden of your reader on things that are very easy to simply state and then move on.
that makes a lot of sense. It seems to me like if you read a history textbook, that's a lot of telling,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
hard. But if you're reading a story, like a sentence here and there of telling is actually easy on the reader. So I like that idea of trusting the reader and letting them just letting the story
Yes.
move on instead of like
Yeah.
making it difficult.
Yeah,
'Cause just
absolutely.
imagery, if you're doing just imagery, like that's difficult in its own way.
Hmm.
Like a poem may do that
Right. Yeah.
and be just through like showing of images and metaphors, but like storytelling is usually a mix, like
Hmm.
right.
And you can let it be a mix. You just don't want to lean on telling too hard, especially in
Hmm.
the beginning. But
Yeah.
yes, telling still needs to be there.
Yeah. So if you can share an idea like in a sentence and then you move on to showing in the next sentence, is that kind
Yeah.
of a good way
Yeah.
to think about it? We have a question from Laura. How to avoid too much telling for sharing a character's backstory when the backstory is essential for the plot?
Well,
I
I think backstory is essential for every plot. Sorry, was there more to that?
Yeah, there is more. But
Okay,
I think
good.
this is a really common question, actually.
Mhm.
Laura goes on to write techniques like having the character engage in a reverie where they remember the past, reveal things in the conversation, or reread old journals can be clunky.
Mm. I think it can feel clunky if there's not a prelude to it. So, flashbacks that just don't, the reader's like, why is this here? Then yeah, super clunky. Journals, super. All of those techniques could be smooth or clunky depending on how you've handled your reader and narrative up to the point where that's there. So
Hmm.
make them want the answer. Start with things like their behavior, their dialogue, their inner thoughts, like saying, ugh, having them be very opinionated about something and you're not sure why. Like, okay, there has to be a reason they really don't like uh, teachers, right? Like, it's not normal for the person to hate teachers this much or have such strong opinions about, oh, they're probably going to fail me because of this, and you're thinking, okay, there's something there I don't quite know the whole story on, and you've just kind of quietly promised the reader that they're going to get an explanation later because you've drawn attention to that opinion so that later when you've kind of given those little breadcrumbs of small questions when a flashback comes or uh, the exposition comes, the readers don't dislike it. They want the exposition. Oh, finally, I get
Hmm.
an explanation. I want to know what this is. And then you can use exposition. It's okay. It's another thing, it's telling, exposition's telling. You can tell later. You can tell the reader this is why they hate teachers and have that flashback. And it will not feel clunky because it's wanted. It doesn't feel kind of shoehorned in for with no purpose.
I think that's interesting because it's easy to miss that idea that you have to set up that desire, that want in the story. So like for each little idea that you're going to share with the telling later, you have to make sure that you already did the work of setting up that wanting, right? So
Yes.
like that's a way of naturally pacing out the telling by making
Mhm.
sure like you created that desire before presenting it.
Yep. And
And
that
that's
goes back to
that,
that
yeah,
third rail of what they want and why they can't have it.
and that,
Everything goes
yeah.
back to that.
And that it seems like that's also a way of making sure you're not doing too much telling because you can't do too much telling if you've set it up so that the reader is really excited when they finally get there, but you have to set that up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. From the very beginning.
Yeah. And I
Absolutely.
know sometimes I read a book and like they, I'm finally like they're telling these things that should be interesting, but they haven't quite set it up. And then it's a little bit disappointing. But if I've
Yeah.
had to spend time wanting to know, then it's much more engaging because it's like filling those boxes that have built up in my mind that
Mhm.
I want
Fulfilling
to get filled.
promises. Yeah. You're fulfilling promises you made to
Yeah.
the reader. Absolutely.
You,
And
you
that's
gotta,
important.
writers have to make a lot of promises, don't they? And keep them, but
Uh-huh. Because if
things
you
I'm
break
learning is
them,
don't
that
keep your
yeah.
promises right away. Wait a little while to keep your promises.
Yes, don't give it right away. You do
Yeah.
want to do little fulfillment, so it's not like holding on to everything till the end. Um, But I mean, that's one reason you don't want to reveal backstory all at once. It's good to show little bits and little bits and little bits, and it can build up.
Hmm.
Lisa Cron, and I'm actually going to go over this in the character course, how to reveal backstory, what parts of backstory are most important, meaning where this fear originated from, and like ways to generate scenes through like the reinforcement of a misbelief, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I, I mean, as a reader, I've never really had the issue of there being too little backstory presented in the story. I wonder if people worry too much about sharing the backstory, and maybe it does not need to be shared nearly as much as one thinks when you
Yeah.
know so much about it.
You should. You should
Yeah.
know everything about them. The reader shouldn't. The reader's never going to know the whole thing. If they do, then you have way too much telling in your in your story. Um, but everything they do is informed by their backstory and what they've done beforehand. So, the character will feel authentic and you'll get that, oh, oh, this character wouldn't do that, right? Like you'll start to predict or feel like, oh, this feels genuine to this character. I get that a lot in my writing group when they're reviewing new chapters, they'll highlight and go, oh my God, this is so Barris. Or this is exactly what, I would expect this character to do at this point. And while they don't know the entire backstory I wrote out, they know enough and they know his actions are true to his prior knowledge and his past life experiences, that it forms a authentic character overall.
Hmm. We have a question from an anonymous attendee. My editor told me that if I don't clearly show who my protagonist is early on, the reader will come to their own conclusions, which may be wrong.
Mm.
Define early, and was that bad advice?
So you want to, I can't give specifics because I don't know how much showing you're doing. But within the first like 5, 10 pages, we'll say, um, you should be able to get readers invested in three things. Matt Bird has a great book out by that I reference a lot, um, where he talks about believing in the reality of your character, caring about the character, and then investing your hopes in that character. You get them to do those three things um, within the first 10, I think he's 10 pages. And you'll get a lot more interest with agents and publishers as well,
Hmm.
and you'll get more readers' engagement. And it is possible to do in very small ways. I do a lot of those tricks and stuff. We review it in detail in the course, but it is a very helpful book if anyone wants to get it. That's actually, I think, is it over here? Yeah, I can even
Oh,
show
yeah.
it to you.
Andrea asked the name of Matt Bird's book, but
The
I
Secrets of
think you're going to
Character,
show it.
sorry.
Nice.
That's this one. He has another book, The Secrets of Story, I'm currently reading right now, and it was written before this one because
Hmm.
in the story there is a chapter of character, and he was like not totally happy with how he explored it and wanted to write a new book that explored the entire concept. Um, but The Secrets of Character was great. It was very informative, and it kind of paired really well with a lot of the other um, craft books that I like. And yeah,
Hmm.
it was good.
Yeah, I think you have read very many craft books,
Yeah,
which is part of how you're so knowledgeable about these
yeah.
topics, right?
And I like seeing connections between
Hmm.
the different books because everybody has a different approach, like every character has a different voice. But being able to find all of the trends and different ways of approaching the same thing can kind of make trends rise to the surface. And it's
Hmm.
just something as an educator I've always liked doing, finding those different ways that things are related to each other. But
Hmm.
yeah, 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 for sure.
Yeah. We have a question from Tom. What's the number one mistake you see writers make? Is there like a common mistake?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In regards to showing and telling, I see it a lot in my students. Um, Early on when I was in my writing group, we've been together for 2.5 years now. Um, and in the beginning, I think most of us do it just when we are new writers. We tell first and then show.
Hmm.
They'll say, Susie felt nervous. She fidgeted in her seat and was picking at her nails. You don't need to tell us she's nervous. Take that sentence out and just show her fidgeting and picking at her nails and move on. You don't need to tell us that she's nervous. And a lot of those, that habit usually stems from a lack of confidence. That's why you see
Yeah.
it in new writers because they don't think that they can effectively portray someone being nervous without telling the reader, by the way, she's nervous. When she's doing this, she's nervous. You don't need to tell us. If someone comes up with, oh, she's anxious, okay, that's still the idea behind her fidgeting and picking her nails. It may not be the word you were looking for, but it's still the idea that you want to um express. but
Mhm.
that's a huge one. I see it a lot. And I highlight it and say, this is great. This is a great showing. Get rid of the tell because you
Yeah.
just took away all the power of your showing by telling us first. Just
Yeah.
delete that and you're good.
You don't always need to do the same thing twice in
Yeah,
different ways.
there's a
Sometimes
more
just,
effective way to do
yeah.
it, and that's just tell, don't
Mhm.
tell, and just show it.
Yeah. And as we talked about earlier, sometimes it's more effective to tell so you can get out of the way and get back to
Yes.
the showing and the experiencing
Hmm. Yeah.
of the story. That's helpful. So we are actually out of time. I want to thank everybody who has been here today and for sharing your great questions. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you to everybody behind the scenes at Authors Publish who makes these talks possible. Yeah, Caitlin and Emily Harstone, S. Calicar, everyone. And yeah, thank you very much, Erin, who
Yeah,
you gave a great talk and shared so much advice today. Thank you very much. Is there
you're welcome.
anything else that you would like to share with everyone today?
No, I mean, just keep writing and be more confident in your writing. Like when you do your first draft, you're probably going to do a lot more telling. That's okay. Just go back and look for the tells and ask yourself, is it something that needs to be there? Or is it a tell that's not really necessary?
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And
Yeah.
thank you.